does not have a population greater than its population determined according to the results of the penultimate decennial census, it shall, subject to rules 5, 2, and 3, be assigned the number of members assigned to it in the readjustment following the completion of that census. 2. On any readjustment. A. If, under any of Rules 2 to 5, 1, the number of members to be assigned to a province, in this paragraph referred to as the first province, is smaller than the number of members to be assigned to any other province not having a population greater than that of the first province, those rules shall not be applied to the first province, and it shall be assigned a number of members equal to the largest number of members to be assigned to any other province not having a population greater than that of the first province. B. If, under any of Rules 2 to 5, 1, a. the number of members to be assigned to a province is smaller than the number of members assigned to it in the readjustment following the completion of the penultimate decennial census, those rules shall not be applied to it, and it shall be assigned the latter number of members. C. If both paragraphs A and B apply to a province, it shall be assigned a number of members equal to the greater of the numbers produced under those paragraphs. 3. On any readjustment. A. If the electoral quotient of a province, in this paragraph referred to as the first province, obtained by dividing its population by the number of members to be assigned to it under any of Rules 2 to 5, 2, is greater than the electoral quotient of Quebec, those rules shall not be applied to the first province, and it shall be assigned a number of members equal to the number obtained by dividing its population by the electoral quotient of Quebec. B. If, as a result of the application of Rule 6, 2, a. the number of members assigned to a province under paragraph A equals the number of members to be assigned to it under any of Rules 2 to 5, 2, it shall be assigned that number of members and paragraph A shall cease to apply to that province. 6. 1. In these rules, electoral quotient means, in respect of a province, the quotient obtained by dividing its population, determined according to the results of the then most recent decennial census, by the number of members to be assigned to it under any of Rules 1 to 5, 3, in the readjustment following the completion of that census. Intermediate province means a province other than Quebec, having a population greater than its population determined according to the results of the penultimate decennial census, but not more than 2.5 million, and not less than 1.5 million. Large province means a province other than Quebec, having a population greater than 2.5 million. Penultimate decennial census means the decennial census that preceded the then most recent decennial census. Population means, except where otherwise specified, the population determined according to the results of the then most recent decennial census. Small province means a province other than Quebec, having a population greater than its population determined according to the results of the penultimate decennial census, and less than 1.5 million. 2. For the purposes of these rules, a. If any fraction less than 1 remains upon completion of the final calculation that produces the number of members to be assigned to a province, that number of members shall equal the number so produced disregarding the fraction. B. If more than one readjustment follows the completion of a decennial census, the most recent of those readjustments shall, upon taking effect, be deemed to be the only readjustment following the completion of that census. C. A readjustment shall not take effect until the termination of the then existing Parliament. Subsection 51, 1, was reenacted by the Constitution Act, 1985, Representation, SC 1986, C8, Part 1, as follows. 51, 1. The number of members of the House of Commons, and the representation of the provinces therein shall, on the coming into force of this subsection, and thereafter on the completion of each decennial census, be readjusted by such authority, in such manner, and from such time, as the Parliament of Canada from time to time provides, subject, and according to the following rules. Rules 1. there shall be assigned to each of the provinces a number of members equal to the number obtained by dividing the total population of the provinces by 279, and by dividing the population of each province by the quotient so obtained, counting any remainder in excess of 0.50 as one after the said process of division. 2. If the total number of members that would be assigned to a province by the application of Rule 1 is less than the total number assigned to that province on the date of coming into force of this subsection, there shall be added to the number of members so assigned such number of members as will result in the province having the same number of members as were assigned on that date. 28. As enacted by the Constitution Act, 1999, Nunavut, SC 1998, C-15, Part 2. Note that the description of the territory of Yukon is now set out in Schedule 1 to the Yukon Act, SC 2002, C7, which replaced RSC 1985, C, White 2. Subsection 51, 2, was previously amended by the Constitution Act, No. 1, 1975, SC 1974-1975-1976, C28, and read as follows. 2. The Yukon Territory, as bounded and described in the Schedule to Chapter Y2 of the Revised Statutes of Canada, 1970, shall be entitled to one member, and the Northwest Territories, as bounded and described in Section 2 of Chapter 22 of the Revised Statutes of Canada, 1970, shall be entitled to two members. 29. As enacted by the Constitution Act, 1915, 5-6 George V, C-45, UK, 30, provided for by the Salaries Act, RSC 1985, C, S3, 31, now provided for in Ontario by the Executive Council Act, RSO 1990, CE.25, and in Quebec by the Executive Power Act, RSQC, E18. 32. A similar provision was included in each of the instruments admitting British Columbia, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland. The executive authorities for Manitoba, Alberta, and Saskatchewan were established by the statutes creating those provinces. See end note 6 to Section 5 above. 33. See end note 65 to Section 129 below. 34. Spent. Now covered by the Representation Act, 2005, SO 2005, C35, Schedule 1. 35. An Act respecting the Legislative Council of Quebec, SQ 1968, C9, provided that the legislature for Quebec shall consist of the Lieutenant Governor and the National Assembly of Quebec, and repealed the provisions of the Legislature Act, RSQ 1964, C6, relating to the Legislative Council of Quebec, now covered by the National Assembly Act, RSQC. A 23.1, Section 72 to 79 following are therefore completely spent. 36. An Act respecting the electoral districts, SQ 1970, C7, provides that the section no longer has effect. 37. Repealed by the Statute Law Revision Act, 1893, 56 to 57 Victoria, C14, UK, the section read as follows. 81. The legislatures of Ontario and Quebec respectively shall be called together not later than 6 months after the union. 38. Probably spent. The subject matter of this section is now covered in Ontario by the Legislative Assembly Act, RSO 1990, CL.10, and in Quebec by the National Assembly Act, RSQC. A 23.1. 39. Probably spent. The subject matter of this section is now covered in Ontario by the Election Act, RSO 1990, CE.6, and the Legislative Assembly Act, RSO 1990, CL.10, and in Quebec by the Elections Act, RSQ 1977, C. E3.3, and the National Assembly Act, RSQ 1977, C. A 23.1. 40. The maximum duration of the Legislative Assembly of Quebec has been changed to 5 years. See the National Assembly Act, RSQ 1977, C. A 23.1. See also Section 4 of the Constitution Act, 1982, which provides a maximum duration for a legislative assembly of 5 years, but also authorizes continuation in special circumstances. 41. See also Section 5 of the Constitution Act, 1982, which provides that there shall be a sitting of each legislature at least once every 12 months. 42. Partially repealed by the Statute Law Revision Act, 1893, 56-57 Victoria, C14, UK, which deleted the following concluding words of the original enactment, and the House of Assembly of New Brunswick existing at the passing of this act shall, unless sooner dissolved, continue for the period for which it was elected. A similar provision was included in each of the instruments admitting British Columbia, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland. The legislatures of Manitoba, Alberta, and Saskatchewan were established by the statutes creating those provinces. See end note 6 to Section 5 above. See also Sections 3 to 5 of the Constitution Act, 1982, which prescribe democratic rights applicable to all provinces, and Subitem 2 of the Schedule to that Act, which sets out the repeal of Section 20 of the Manitoba Act, 1870. Section 20 of the Manitoba Act, 1870 has been replaced by Section 5 of the Constitution Act, 1982. Section 20 reads as follows. 20. There shall be a session of the legislature once at least in every year, so that 12 months shall not intervene between the last sitting of the legislature in one session and its first sitting in the next session.